the defiance of mathematics. I thought about my speech at the Museum of Quadratic Equations. With the Beach Boys, I got a strange feeling behind my eyes and in my stomach. I had no idea what that feeling was, but it made me think of Isabel, and the way she had hugged me last night, after I had come home and told her Daniel Russell had suffered a fatal heart attack in front of me. There had been a slight moment of suspicion, a brief hardening of her stare, but it had softened into compassion. Whatever else she might have thought about her husband, he wasn't a killer. The last thing I listened to was a tune called Clair de Lune by Debussy. That was the closest representation of space I had ever heard. And I stood there in the middle of the room, frozen with shock that a human could have made such a beautiful noise. This beauty terrified me, like an alien creature appearing out of nowhere, an ipsoid bursting out of the desert. I had to stay focused. I had to keep believing everything I had been told, that this was a species of ugliness and violence beyond redemption. Newton was scratching at the front door. The scratching was putting me off the music, so I went over and tried to decipher what he wanted. It turned out that what he wanted was to go outside. There was a lead I had seen Isabel use, and so I attached it to the collar. As I walked the dog, I tried to think more negatively towards the humans. And it certainly seemed ethically questionable, the relationship between humans and dogs, both of whom, on the scale of intelligence that covered every species in the universe, would have been somewhere in the middle, not too far apart. But I have to say that dogs didn't seem to mind it. In fact, they went along quite happily with the setup most of the time. I let Newton lead the way. We passed a man on the other side of the road. The man just stopped and stared at me and smiled to himself. I smiled and waved my hand, understanding this was an appropriate human greeting. He didn't wave back. Yes, humans are a troubling species. We carried on walking, and we passed another man. A man in a wheelchair. He seemed to know me. Andrew, he said, isn't it terrible? The news about Daniel Russell. Yes, I said, I was there. I saw it happen. It was horrible. Just horrible. Oh my God, I had no idea. Mortality is a very tragic thing. Indeed it is. Anyway, I'd better be going. The dog is in quite a hurry. I will see you. Yes, absolutely. But may I ask, how are you? I'd heard you'd been a bit done well yourself. Oh, fine. I'm over that. It was just a bit of a misunderstanding, really. Oh, I see. The conversation dwindled further, and I made my excuses. Newton dragging me forward until we reached a large stretch of grass. This is what dogs like to do, I discovered. They liked to run around on grass, pretending they were free, shouting, "We're free, we're free. Look, how free we are at each other." It really was a sorry sight. But it worked for them, and for Newton, in particular. It was a collective illusion they had chosen to swallow. And it was submitting to it wholeheartedly, without any nostalgia for their former wolf selves. That was the remarkable thing about humans, their ability to shape the path of other species, to change their fundamental nature. Maybe it could happen to me. Maybe I could be changed. Maybe I already was being changed. Who knew? I hope not. I hoped I was staying as pure as I had been told, as strong and isolated as a prime as a 97. I sat on a bench and watched the traffic. No matter how long I stayed on this planet, I doubted I would ever get used to the sight of cars bound by gravity and poor technology to the road, hardly moving on the roads because there were so many of them. Was it wrong to thwart a species' technological advancement? That was a new question in my mind. I didn't want it there, so I was quite relieved when Newton started barking. I turned to look at him. He was standing still, his head steady in one direction, as he carried on making as loud a noise as he possibly could. Look! He seemed to bark. Look! 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 I was picking up his language. There was another road, a different one to the one with all the traffic, a line of terraced houses facing the park. I turned towards it, as Newton clearly wanted me to do. I saw Gulliver, on his own, walking along the pavement, trying his best to hide behind his hair. He was meant to be at school, and he wasn't, unless human school was walking along the street and thinking, which it really should have been. He saw me. He froze, and then he turned around and started walking in the other direction. Gulliver? I called. Gulliver? He ignored me. If anything, he started walking away faster than he had done before. His behavior concerned me. After all, inside his head was the knowledge that the world's biggest mathematical puzzle had been solved, and by his own father. I hadn't acted last night. I told myself that I needed to find more information, check there was no one else Andrew Martin could have told. Also, I was probably too exhausted after my encounter with Daniel. I would wait another day. Maybe even two. That had been the plan. Gulliver had told me he hadn't said anything, and that he wasn't going to. But how could he be totally trusted? His mother was convinced right now that he was at school, and yet he evidently wasn't. I got up from the bench and walked over the litter-strewn grass to where Newton was still barking. Come on, I said, realizing I should probably have acted already. We have to go. We arrived on the road just as Gulliver was turning off it, and so I decided to follow him and see where he was going. At one point he stopped and took something from his pocket. A box. He took out a cylindrical object and put it in his mouth and lit it. He turned around, but I had sensed he would, and was already hiding behind a tree. He began walking again. Soon he reached a larger road, Coleridge Road this one was called. He didn't want to be on this road for long, too many cars, too many opportunities to be seen. He kept on walking, and after a while the buildings stopped, and there were no cars or people anymore. I was worried he was going to turn around, because there were no nearby trees or anything else to hide behind. Also, although I was physically near enough to be easily seen if he did turn to look, I was too far for any mind manipulation to work. Remarkably, though, he didn't turn around again, not once. We passed a building with lots of empty cars outside, shining in the sun. The building had the word Honda on it. There was a man inside the glass in a shirt and tie watching us. Galliva then cut across a grass field. Eventually, he reached 4 metal tracks in the ground, parallel lines, close together, but stretching as far as the eye could see. He just stood there, absolutely still, waiting for something. Newton looked at Galliva and then up at me, with concern. He let out a deliberately loud whine. Shoo, I said. Keep quiet. After a while a train appeared in the distance, getting closer as it was carried along the tracks. I noticed Galliva's fists clenched, and his whole body stiffened as he stood only a meter or so away from the train's path. As the train was about to pass where he was standing, Newton barked, but the train was too loud and too close to Galliva for him to hear. This was interesting. Maybe I wouldn't have to do anything. Maybe Galliva was going to do it himself. The train passed. Galliva's hands stopped being fists, and he seemed to relax again. Or maybe it was disappointment. But before he turned around and started walking away, I had dragged Newton back, and we were out of sight, Grigory Perelman, so I had left Galliva untouched. Unharmed, I had returned home with Newton while Galliva had carried on walking. I had no idea where he was going, but it was pretty clear to me from his lack of direction that he hadn't been heading anywhere specific. I concluded, therefore, that he wasn't going to meet someone. Indeed, he had seemed to want to avoid people. Still, I knew it was dangerous. I knew that it wasn't just proof of the Riemann hypothesis, which was the problem, it was knowledge that it could be proved, and Galliva had that knowledge inside his skull as he walked around the streets. Yet I justified my delay because I had been told to be patient. I had been told to find out exactly who knew. If human progress was to be thwarted, then I needed to be thorough. To kill Galliva now would have been premature, because his death and that of his mother would be the last acts I could commit before suspicions were aroused. Yes, this is what I told myself as I unclipped Newton's lead and re-entered the house, and then accessed that sitting room computer, typing in the words Poincare conjecture into the search box. Soon I found Isabel had been right. This conjecture, concerning a number of very basic topological laws about spheres and four-dimensional space, had been solved by a Russian mathematician called Grigory Perelman. On the 18th of March, 2010, just over 3 years ago, it was announced that he had won a Clay Millennium Prize, but he had turned it down and the $1 million that had gone with it. "I'm not interested in money or fame," he had said. "I don't want to be on display like an animal in a zoo. I'm not a hero of mathematics." This was not the only prize he had been offered. There had been others. A prestigious prize from the European Mathematical Society, one from the International Congress of Mathematicians in Madrid, and the Fields Medal, the highest award in mathematics. All of them he had turned down, choosing instead to live a life of poverty and unemployment, caring for his elderly mother. Humans are arrogant. Humans are greedy. They care about nothing but money and fame. They do not appreciate mathematics for its own sake, but for what it can get them. I logged out. Suddenly I felt weak. I was hungry. That must have been it. So I went to the kitchen and looked for food. Crunchy whole nut peanut butter. I ate some capers and then a stock cube and chewed on a stick-like vegetable called celery. Eventually, I got out some bread, a staple of human cuisine, and I looked in the cupboard for something to put on it. Castor sugar was my first option, and then I tried some mixed herbs. Neither was very satisfying. After much anxious trepidation and analysis of the nutritional information, I decided to try something called crunchy whole nut peanut butter. I placed it on the bread and gave some to the dog. He liked it. "Should I try it?" I asked him. "Yes, you definitely should." It appeared to be the response. Dog words weren't really words. They were more like melodies, silent melodies sometimes, but melodies all the same. "It is very tasty indeed," he wasn't wrong. As I placed it in my mouth and began to chew, I realized that human food could actually be quite good. I'd never enjoyed food before. Now I came to think of it. I'd never enjoyed anything before, and yet today, even amid my strange feelings of weakness and doubt, I had experienced the pleasures of music and of food, and maybe even the simple enjoyment of canine company. After I'd eaten one piece of bread and peanut butter, I made another one for us both. And then another, Newton's appetite proving to be at least a match for mine. "I'm not what I am," I told him at one stage. "You know that, don't you? I mean, that is why you were so hostile at first, why you growled whenever I was near you. You sensed it, didn't you? More than a human could. You knew there was a difference." His silence spoke volumes, and as I stared into his glassy, honest eyes, I felt the urge to tell him more. "I have killed someone," I told him, feeling a sense of relief. "I am what a human would categorize as a murderer, a judgmental term, and based in this case, on the wrong judgments. You see, sometimes to save something you have to kill a little piece of it, but still, a murderer, that is what they would call me if they knew. Not that they would ever really be able to know how I had done it. You see, as you no doubt know, humans are still at the point in their development where they see a strong difference between the mental and the physical within the same body. They have mental hospitals and body hospitals. As if one doesn't directly affect the other, and so if they can't accept that a mind is directly responsible for the body of the same person, they are hardly likely to understand how a mind, or be it not a human one, can affect the body of someone else. Of course, my skills are not just the product of biology. I have technology, but it is unseen, it is inside me, and now resides in my left hand. It allowed me to take this shape, it enables me to contact my home, and it strengthens my mind. It makes me able to manipulate mental and physical processes. I can perform telekinesis. Look right now. Look what I am doing with the lid of the peanut butter jar, and also something very close to hypnosis. You see, where I am from, everything is seamless. Minds, bodies, technologies all come together in a quite beautiful convergence. The phone rang at that point. It had rung earlier, too. I didn't answer it, though. There were some tastes, just as there were some songs by the Beach Boys, in my room, God only knows, Sloop John B., that were just too good to disturb. But then the peanut butter ran out, and Newton and I stared at each other in mutual mourning. I am sorry, Newton, but it appears we have run out of peanut butter. This cannot be true, you must be mistaken. Check again. I checked again. No, I am not mistaken. Properly, check properly. That was just a glance. I checked properly. I even showed him the inside of the jar. He was still disbelieving, so I placed the jar right up next to his nose, which was clearly where he wanted it. Ah, you see, there is still some look, and he licked the contents of the jar until he, too, had to eventually agree we were out of the stuff. I laughed out loud. I had never laughed. It was a very odd feeling, but not unpleasant. Then we went and sat on the sofa in the living room. Why are you here? I don't know if the dog's eyes were asking me this, but I gave him an answer anyway. I am here to destroy information that exists in the bodies of certain machines, and the minds of certain humans. That is my purpose, although obviously while I am here I am also collecting information. First, how volatile are they, how violent, how dangerous to themselves and others, are their flaws? And there do seem to be quite a few, insurmountable, or is there hope? These questions are the sort I have in mind, even if I am not supposed to. First and foremost, though, what I am doing involves elimination. Newton looked at me bleakly, but he didn't judge. And we stayed there on that purple sofa for quite a while. Something was happening to me, I realized, and it had been happening ever since Debussy and the Beach Boys. I wished I had never played them. For 10 minutes we sat in silence. This mournful mood only altered with the distraction of the front door opening and closing. It was Gulliver. He waited silently in the hallway for a moment or two, and then hung up his coat and dropped his school bag. He came into the living room, walking slowly. He didn't make eye contact. Don't tell Mum, okay? What? I said. Don't tell her what? He was awkward. That I wasn't at school. Okay, I won't. He looked at Newton, whose head was back on my lap. He seemed confused, but didn't comment. He turned to go upstairs. What were you doing by the train track? I asked him. I saw his hands tense up. What? You were just standing there as the train passed. You followed me. Yes, I did. I followed you. I wasn't going to tell you. In fact, I'm surprising myself by telling you now, but my innate curiosity won out. He answered with a kind of muted groan and headed upstairs. After a while, with a dog on your lap, you realize there is a necessity to stroke it. Don't ask me how this necessarily comes about. It clearly has something to do with the dimensions of the human upper body. Anyway, I stroked the dog, and as I did so, I realized it was actually a pleasant feeling, the warmth and the rhythm of it. Isabel's dance. Eventually, Isabel came back. I shifted along the sofa to reach such a position that I could witness her walking in through the front door. Just to see the simple effort of it, the physical pushing of the door, the extraction of the key, the closing of the door, and the placing of that key and the others it was attached to in a small oval basket on a static piece of wooden furniture. All of that was quite mesmerizing to me. The way she did such things in single gliding movements, almost dance-like without thinking. About them, I should have been looking down on such things, but I wasn't. She seemed to be continually operating above the task she was doing, a melody rising above, rhythm, yet she was still what she was, a human. She walked down the hallway, exhaling the whole way, her face containing both a smile and a frown at once. Like her son, she was confused to see the dog lying on my lap, and equally confused when she saw the dog jump off my lap and run over to her. "What's with Newton?" she asked. "With him, he seems lively, does he?" "Yes, and I don't know, his eyes seem brighter." "Oh, it might have been the peanut butter. And the music." "Peanut butter. Music? You never listen to music." "You've been listening to music." "Yes, we have." She looked at me with suspicion. "Right, let's see. We've been listening to music all day long. How are you feeling? I mean, you know about Daniel." "Oh, it is very sad." I said. "How was your day?" She sighed. "He was okay." This was a lie. I could tell that. I looked at her. My eyes could stay on her with ease. I noticed. What had happened? Was this another side effect of the music? I suppose I was getting acclimatized to her and to humans in general. Physically, at least from the outside, I was one too. It was becoming a new normality in a sense. It even so. My stomach churned far less with her than with the sight of the others I saw, walking past the window peering in at me. In fact, that day, or at that point in that day, it didn't churn at all. "I feel like I should phone Tabitha," she said. "It's difficult though, isn't it? She'll be inundated. I might just send her an email and let her know, if there's anything we can do." I nodded. "That's a good idea." She studied me for a while. "Yes," she said, "at a lower frequency." "I think so." She looked at the phone. "Has anyone called?" "I think so. The phone rang a few times, but you didn't pick it up." No, I didn't. I don't really feel up to lengthy conversations, and I feel cursed at the moment. The last time I had a lengthy conversation with anyone who wasn't you or Gulliver, they ended up dying in front of me." "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" Flippantly. "It's a sad day." "I know," I said. "It hasn't sunk in yet, really." She went away to listen to the messages. She came back. "Lots of people have been calling you." "Oh," I said. "Who?" "Your mother. But be warned, she might be doing a trademark oppressive worry thing. She's heard about your little event at Corpus. I don't know how. The college called too, wanting to speak, doing a good job of sounding concerned. A journalist from the Cambridge Evening News. And Ari being sweet. She wonders if you'd be up to going to a football match on Saturday." "Someone else too." She paused for a moment. She said her name was Maggie. "Oh yes." I said, faking it. "Of course, Maggie." And she raised her eyebrows at me. It meant something, clearly, but I had no idea what. It was frustrating. You see, the language of words was only one of the human languages. There were many others, as I have pointed out. The language of sighs, the language of silent moments, and most significantly, the language of frowns. Then she did the opposite. Her eyebrows going as low as they could, she sighed and went into the kitchen. "What have you been doing with the castor sugar?" "Eating it," I said. "It was a mistake, sorry." "Well, feel free to put things back." "I forgot." "Sorry." "It's okay. It's just been a day and a half, that's all." I nodded and tried to act human. "What do you want me to do?" "I mean, what should I do?" "Well, you could start by calling your mother, but don't tell her about the hospital." "I know what you're like." "What? What am I like?" "You tell her more than you tell me." Now that was worrying. That was very worrying indeed. I decided to phone her right away. The mother, remarkable as it may sound, the mother was an important concept for humans. Not only were they truly aware who their mother was, but in many cases they also kept in contact with them throughout their lives. Of course, for someone like me whose mother was never there to be known, this was a very exotic idea. So exotic, I was scared to pursue it, but I did, because if her son had told her too much information, I obviously needed to know. "Andrew?" "Yes, Mother. It is me." "Oh, Andrew." She spoke at a high frequency. The highest I'd ever heard. "Hello, Mother." Andrew, me and your father have been worried sick about you." "Oh," I said, "I had a little episode. I temporarily lost my mind. I forgot to put on my clothes. That's all." "Is that all you have to say?" "No, no, it isn't. I have to ask you a question, Mother. It is an important question." "Oh, Andrew, what is the matter?" "The matter." "Which matter? Is it Isabel? Has she been nagging you again? Is that what this is about, again?" The static crackle of a sigh. "Yes, you've told us over here now, that you and Isabel have been having difficulties, that she's not been as understanding as she could have been about your workload, that she's not been there for you." I thought of Isabel lying about her day to stop me worrying, making me food, stroking my skin. "No," I said, "she is there for him, me. And Gulliver, what about him? I thought she'd turned him against you because of that band he wanted to be in, but you were right, darling. He shouldn't be messing around in bands, not after all that he's done." "Band? I don't know, Mother. I don't think it is that." "Why are you calling me Mother? You never call me Mother." "But you are my mother. What do I call you?" "Mum." "You call me Mum." "Mum," I said. It sounded the most strange of all the strange words. "Mum, Mum, 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 I want to know if I spoke to you recently." She wasn't listening. "We wish we were there. Come over," I said. I was interested to see what she looked like. "Come over right now." "Well, if we didn't live 12,000 miles away." "Oh," I said, 12,000 miles didn't sound like much. "Come over this afternoon then." The mother laughed. "Still got you sense of humor." "Yes," I said, "I am still very funny. Listen, did I speak to you last Saturday?" "No, Andrew. Have you lost your memory? Is this amnesia?" "You're acting like you have amnesia." "I'm a bit confused, that's all." "It's not amnesia. The doctors told me that. It's just, I have been working hard." "Yes, yes, I know. You told us. So what did I tell you?" "That you've hardly been sleeping. That you've been working harder than you ever have, at least since your PhD. And then she started giving me information, and I hadn't asked for. She started talking about her hip bone. It was causing her a lot of pain. She was on pain relief medication, but it wasn't working. I found the conversation disconcerting and even nauseating. The idea of prolonged pain was quite alien to me. Humans considered themselves to be quite medically advanced, but they had yet to solve this problem in any meaningful way, just as they had yet to solve the problem of death. "Mother, Mum, listen, what do you know about the Riemann hypothesis? That's the thing you're working on, isn't it?" Working on, yes, I am still working on it, and I will never prove it. I realize that now. "Oh, all right, darling. Well, don't beat yourself up about it. Now listen." Pretty soon she was back to talking about the pain again. She said the doctor had told us she should get a hip replacement, that would be made of titanium. I almost gasped when she said that, but I didn't want to tell her about titanium. As the humans obviously didn't know about that yet, they would find out in their own time. Then she started talking about my father and how his memory was getting worse. The doctor had told him not to drive anymore, and that it looked increasingly unlikely that he would be able to finish the book on macroeconomic theory he had been hoping to get published. "It makes me worry about you, Andrew. You know, only last week I told you what the doctor had said about how I should advise you to get a brain scan. It can run in families." "Oh," I said, "I really didn't know what else was required of me." The truth was that I wanted the conversation to end. I'd obviously not told my parents, or I hadn't told my mother at any rate, and from the sound of things, my father's brain was such that it would probably lose any information I had given him, also, and it was a big also. The conversation was depressing me. It was making me think about human life in a way I didn't want to think about it. Human life, I realized, got progressively worse as you got older by the sound of things. You arrived with baby feet and hands and infinite happiness. And then the happiness slowly evaporated as your feet and hands grew bigger. And then from the teenage years onwards, happiness was something you could lose your grip of, and once it started to slip, it gained mass. It was as if the knowledge that it could slip was the thing that made it more difficult to hold. no matter how big your feet and hands were. Why was this depressing? Why did I care when it was not my job to do so? Again, I felt immense gratitude that I only looked like a human being and would never, actually be one. She carried on talking, and as she did so, I realized there could be no cosmic consequence at all if I stopped listening, and with that realization, I switched off the phone. I closed my eyes, wanting to see nothing, but I did see something. I saw Tabitha leaning over her husband as aspirin froth slid out of his mouth. I wondered if my mother was the same age as Tabitha or older. When I opened my eyes again, I realized Newton was standing there looking up at me. His eyes told me he was confused. Why did you not say goodbye? You usually say goodbye. And then bizarrely, I did something I didn't understand, something which had absolutely no logic to it at all. I picked up the phone and dialed the same number. After 3 rings, she answered, and then I spoke. Sorry, Mum, I meant to say goodbye. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Are you there? We can hear you. We are here. Listen, it's safe. The information is destroyed. For now, the humans will remain at level 3. There is no worry. You have destroyed all the evidence and all possible sources. I have destroyed the information on Andrew Martin's computer and on Daniel Russell's computer. Daniel Russell is destroyed also. Heart attack. He was a heart risk, so that was the most logical cause of death in the circumstances. However, you destroyed Isabella Martin and Gulliver Martin. No, I haven't. There is no need to destroy them. They do not know. Gulliver Martin knows. Isabella Martin doesn't. But Gulliver has no motivation to say anything. You must destroy him. You must destroy both of them. No, there is no need. If you want me to, if you really think it is required, then I can manipulate his neurological processes. I can make him forget what his father told him. Not that he really knows anyway, he has no real understanding of mathematics. The effects of any mind manipulation you carry out disappear the moment you return home. You know that. He won't say anything. He might have said something already. His aren't to be trusted. They don't even trust themselves. Gulliver hasn't said anything, and Isabella knows nothing. You must complete your task. If you do not complete your task, someone else will be sent to complete it for you. No, I will complete it. Don't worry. I will complete my task. Not two. I held a jewel in my fingers. You can't say A is made of B or vice versa. All mass is interaction. Richard Feynman. We're all lonely for something we don't know we're lonely for. David Foster Wallace. For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love. Charles Sagan. Sleepwalking. I stood next to his bed while he slept. I don't know how long I just stood there in the dark, listening to his deep breathing, as he slipped deeper and deeper below dreams. Half an hour maybe. He hadn't pulled the window blind down, so I looked out at the night. There was no moon from this angle, but I could see a few stars, suns lighting dead solar systems elsewhere in the galaxy. Everywhere you can see in their sky, or almost everywhere, is lifeless. That must affect them. That must give them ideas above their station. That must send them insane. Gulliver rolled over, and I decided to wait no longer. It was now, or it was never. You will pull back your duvet, I told him, in a voice he wouldn't have heard if he had been awake, but which reached right in, writing theater waves to become a command from his own brain. And slowly you will sit up in your bed, your feet will be on the rug, and you will breathe, and you will compose yourself, and then you will stand up. And he did indeed stand up. He stayed there, breathing deeply and slowly, waiting for the next command. You will walk to the door. Do not worry about opening the door, because it is already open. There, just walk, just walk, just walk to your door. He did exactly as I said, and he was there in the doorway, oblivious to everything except my voice, your voice, which only had 2 words that needed to be said: fall forward. I moved closer to him. Somehow those words were slow to arrive. I needed time, another minute, at least. I was there, closer, able to smell the scent of sleep on him, of humanity, and I remembered, you must complete your task. If you do not complete your task, someone else will be sent to complete it for you. I swallowed, my mouth was so dry it hurt. I felt the infinite expanse of the universe behind me, a vast, if neutral, force, the neutrality of time, of space, of mathematics, of logic, of survival. I closed my eyes, waited. Before I opened them, I was being gripped by the throat. I could barely breathe. He had turned 180 degrees, and his left hand had me by the neck. I pulled it away, and now both his hands were fists swinging at me, wild, angry, hitting me almost as much as he missed. He got the side of my head. I walked backwards away from him. But he was moving forwards at just the same speed. His eyes were open. He was seeing me now, seeing me and not seeing me all at the same time. I could have said stop, of course, but I didn't. Maybe I wanted to witness some human violence firsthand, even unconscious violence, to understand the importance of my task. By understanding it, I would be able to fulfill it. Yes, that might have been it. That may also have explained why I let myself bleed when he punched me on the nose. I'd reached his desk now, and could retreat no further, so I just stood there as he kept hitting my head, my neck, my chest, my arms. He roared now, his mouth as wide as it could go, baring teeth. Roar! This roar woke him up, his legs went weak, and he nearly fell to the floor, but he recovered in time. Ah, he said. He didn't know where he was for a moment. He saw me in the dark, and this time it was conscious sight. Dad, I nodded as a slow, thin stream of blood reached my mouth. Isabel was running up the stairs to the attic. What's going on? Nothing, I said. I heard a noise so I came upstairs. Gulliver was sleepwalking, that's all. Isabel switched the light on, gasped as she saw my face. You're bleeding. It's nothing. He didn't know what he was doing. Gulliver was sitting on the edge of his bed now, flinching from the light. He too looked at my face, but he didn't say anything yet. All, I wasn't. Gulliver wanted to go back to bed, to sleep, so 10 minutes later Isabel and I were alone, and I was sitting on the side of the bath, as she placed an antiseptic solution called TCP on a circle of cotton wool and dabbed it gently on a cut on my forehead, and then on my lip. Now these were wounds I could have healed with a single thought. Just to feel pain sometimes was enough to cancel it, and yet, even as the antiseptic stung on contact with each cut, the injuries stayed. I thought, I forced them to. I couldn't allow her to get suspicious. But was it just that? How's your nose? She asked. I caught sight of it in the mirror. A smear of blood around one nostril. It's okay, I said, feeling it. It isn't broken. Her eyes squinted in pure concentration. This one on your forehead is really bad, and there's going to be one giant bruise there. He must have really hit you hard. Did you try and restrain him? Yes, I lied. I did, but he kept on. I could smell her. Clean human smells. The smells of the cream she used to wash and moisturize her face. The smell of her shampoo. A delicate trace of ammonia barely competing with the heavy scent of antiseptic. She was physically closer to me than she had ever been. I looked at her neck. She had 2 little dark moles on it, close together, charting unknown binary stars. I thought of Andrew Martin kissing her. This is what humans did. They kissed. Like so many human things, it made no sense. Or maybe if you tried it, the logic would unfold. Did he say anything? No, I said. No, he just yelled. It was very primal. I don't know. Between you and him, it never ends. What never ends? The worry. She placed the blood-stained cotton wool in the small bin beside the sink. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry for everything, for the past and the future. An apology said while in dull pain made me feel as close to human as it was possible to feel. I could almost have written a poem. We went back to bed. She held my hand in the dark. I gently pulled it away. We've lost him, she said. It took me a moment to realize she was talking about Gulliver. Well, I said, maybe we just have to accept him as he is, even if he's different to what we've known. I just don't understand him. You know, he's our son, and we've known him for 16 years. And yet I feel like I don't know him at all. Well, maybe we should try not to understand so much and accept some more. That's a very difficult thing and a very strange thing to come from your mouth, Andrew. So I suppose the next question is, what about me? Do you understand me? I don't think you understand yourself, Andrew. I wasn't Andrew. I knew I wasn't Andrew. But equally, I was losing myself. I was. I wasn't. That was the problem. I was lying in bed with a human woman I could now almost appreciate as beautiful, willfully still feeling the sting of antiseptic in my wounds and thinking of her strange but fascinating skin and the way she'd cared for me. No one in the universe cared for me. You didn't, did you? We had technology to care for us now, and we didn't need emotions. We were alone. We worked together for our preservation, but emotionally we needed no one. We just needed the purity of mathematical truth. And yet I was scared of falling asleep, because the moment I fell asleep my wounds would heal, and right then I didn't want that to happen. Right then I found a strange, but real comfort in the pain. I had so many worries now, so many questions. Do you believe humans are ever knowable? I asked. I wrote a book on Charlemagne. I hope so. But humans in their natural state, are they good or are they bad, would you say, and they be trusted? Or is their own real state just violence and greed and cruelty? Well, that's the oldest question there is. What do you think? I'm tired, Andrew. I'm sorry. Yes, me too. I'll see you in the morning. Night. Night. I stayed awake for a while as Isabel slipped towards sleep. The trouble was I still wasn't used to the night. It may not have been as dark as I first thought it to be. There was moonlight, starlight, airglow, street lamps, and sunlight backscattered by interplanetary dust. But the humans still spent half their time in deep shadow. This I was sure was one of the chief reasons for personal and sexual relationships here, the need to find comfort in the dark. And it was a comfort being next to her. So I just stayed there, hearing her breath move in and out, sounding like the tide of some exotic sea. At some point my little finger touched hers in the double night beneath the duvet. And this time I kept it there, and imagined I was really what she thought I was, and that we were connected. Two humans, primitive enough to truly care about each other. It was a comforting thought, and the one which led me down those ever-darkening stairs of the mind towards sleep. I may need more time. You do not need time. I'm going to kill who I need to kill. Don't worry about that. We are not worried. But I'm not just here to destroy information. I'm here to gather it. That is what you said, wasn't it? Stuff on mathematical understanding can be read across the universe. I know that. I'm not talking about neuroflashes. I'm talking about stuff that can only be picked up on from here, on Earth itself, to give us more insight into how the humans live. It has been a long time since anyone was here, at least in human terms. Explain why you need more time for this. Complexity demands time, but humans are primitives. They are the most shallow of mysteries. No. You are wrong. They exist simultaneously in two worlds, the world of appearances and the world of truth. The connecting strands between these worlds take many forms. When I first arrived here, I did not understand certain things. For instance, I did not understand why clothes were so important, or why a dead cow became beef, or why grass cut a certain way demanded not to be walked upon, or why household pets were so important to them. The humans are scared of nature and are greatly reassured when they can prove to themselves they have mastery over it. This is why lawns exist, and why wolves evolved into dogs, and why their architecture is based on unnatural shapes. But really, nature, pure nature, is just a symbol to them, a symbol of human nature. They are interchangeable. So what are you saying? What I am saying is that it takes time to understand humans because they don't understand themselves. They have been wearing clothes for so long. Metaphorical clothes. That is what I am talking about. That was the price of human civilization. To create it, they had to close the door on their true selves. And so they are lost. That is how I understand it. And that is why they invented art. Books, music, films, plays, painting, sculpture. They invented them as bridges back to themselves, back to who they are. But however close they get, they are forever removed. What I am saying, I suppose, is that last night I was about to kill the boy, Gulliver. He was about to fall down the stairs in his sleep, but then, his true nature came out and he attacked me. Attacked you with what? With himself, with his arms, his hands. He was still asleep, but his eyes were open. He attacked me, or the me he thinks I am, his father. And it was pure rage. The humans are violent. That is not news. No, I know, I know. But he woke and he wasn't violent. That is the battle they have. And I believe if we understand human nature a little more, then we will know better what action to take in the future when other advances are made. In the future, when another overpopulation crisis arises, there may come a time when Earth becomes a valid option for our species. So surely, as much knowledge as possible on human psychology and society and behavior is going to help. They are defined by greed. Not all of them. For instance, there is a mathematician called Grigori Perelman. He turned down money and prizes. He looks after his mother. We have a distorted view. I think it would be useful for all of us if I researched further. But you don't need the two humans for that. Oh, I do. Why? Because they think they know who I am. And I have a true chance of seeing them, the real them, behind the walls they have built for themselves. And speaking of walls, Gulliver knows nothing, now. I cancelled his knowledge of what his father told him on his last night. While I am here, there is no danger. You must act soon. You don't have forever. I know. Don't worry, I won't need forever. They must die. Yes, whiter than the sky. It was sleep psychosis. Isabel told Gulliver at breakfast the next day. It was very common. Lots of people have had it. Lots of perfectly normal insane people. Like that man from Rem, he had it. And he was meant to be as nice as rock stars come. She hadn't seen me. I just entered the kitchen. But now she noticed my presence and was puzzled by the sight of me. Your face, she said. Last night there were cuts and bruises. It's totally healed. Must have been better than it looked. The night might exaggerate things. Yes, but even so. She glanced at her son, struggling uneasily with his cereal, and decided not to go on. You might need the day of school, Gulliver, said Isabel. I expected him to agree to this, seeing that he preferred an education that involved staring at rail tracks. But he looked at me, considered for a moment and concluded. No. No, it's okay. I feel fine, it was just me and Newton in the house. I was still recovering, you see, recover. The most human of words, the implication being that healthy normal life is covering something. The violence that is there underneath. The violence I had seen in Gulliver the night before. To be healthy meant to be covered, clothed, literally and metaphorically. Yet, I needed to find what lay beneath, something that would satisfy the hosts and justify the delay I was taking in my task. I discovered a pile of paper, tied with an elastic band. It was in Isabel's wardrobe, hidden among all those essential clothes, yellowing with age. I sniffed the page and guessed at least a decade. The top sheet had the words "wider than the sky" on them, along with these ones: a novel by Isabel Martin. A novel? I read a little bit of it and realized that although the central character's name was Charlotte, she could just as easily have been called Isabel. Charlotte heard herself sigh, a tired, old machine releasing pressure. Everything weighed down on her, the small rituals of her daily existence, filling the dishwasher, picking up from school, cooking, had all been performed, as if underwater. The mutual energy reserve, shared by her mother and her child, had now, she conceded, been monopolized by Oliver. He had been running wild since she had picked him up from school, firing that blue alien blaster, or whatever it was. She didn't know why her mother had bought it. Actually, she did know. To prove a point. 5-year-old boys want to play with guns, Charlotte. It's only natural. You can't deprive them of their nature. Die, die, die. Charlotte closed the oven door and set the timer. She turned around to see Oliver pointing the massive blue gun up at her face. No, Oliver, she said. Too tired to battle the abstract, anger clouding his features. Don't shoot, Mummy. He maintained his pose, fired cheap electric fairground sounds a few more times, then ran out of the kitchen, through the hallway, and noisily exterminated invisible aliens as he charged up the stairs. She remembered the quiet, echoing babble of university corridors, and realized that missing it was a kind of pain. She wanted to return, to teach again, but she worried she may have left it too late. Maternity leave had stretched into permanent leave, and the belief had grown that she could be fulfilled as a wife and mother, a historical archetype, keeping her feet on the ground, as her mother always advised, while her high-flying husband made sure he didn't dip beneath the clouds. Charlotte shook her head in theatrical exasperation, as if she were being observed by an audience of stern-faced mother watches, examining her progress and making notes on clipboards. She was often aware of the self-conscious nature of her parenting, the way she had to create a role outside of herself. A part already plotted out for her. Don't shoot, Mummy. She squatted down and looked through the oven door. The lasagna would be another 45 minutes, and Jonathan still wasn't back from his conference. She raised herself back up and went into the living room. The wobbly glass of the drinks cabinet glinted, shining like a false promise. She turned the old key and opened the door. A mini metropolis of spirit bottles bathed in dark shadow. She reached for the Empire State, the Bombay Sapphire, and poured out her evening allowance. Jonathan, late last Thursday, late this Thursday. She acknowledged this fact as she slumped down on the city, but did not get too close to it. Her husband was a mystery she no longer had the energy to unravel. Anyway, it was known to be the first rule of marriage: solve the mystery, end the love. So, families often stayed together. Wives sometimes managed to stay with husbands and put up with whichever misery they felt by writing novels and hiding them at the bottom of their wardrobes. Mothers put up with their children no matter how difficult those children were, no matter how close to insanity they pushed their parents. Anyway, I stopped reading there. I felt it was an intrusion, a bit rich, I know, from someone who was living inside her husband's identity. I put it back in its place in the wardrobe underneath the clothes. Later on I told her what I had found. She gave me an unreadable look and her cheeks went red. I didn't know if it was a blush or anger. Maybe it was a little of both. That was private. You weren't ever supposed to see that. I know. That is why I wanted to see it. I want to understand you. Why? There's no academic glory or $1 million prize if you solve me. Andrew, you shouldn't go snooping around. Your father and her husband know a wife that really is quite rich coming from you. What does that mean? She sighed. Nothing, nothing. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. You should say whatever you feel you should say. Good policy, but I think that would mean we'd have divorced around 2002 at a conservative estimate. Well, maybe you would have been happy if you had divorced him, I mean me in 2002. Well, we'll never know, no. And the phone rang. It was someone for me. Hello? A man spoke. His voice was casual, familiar, but there was a curiosity there too. Hey, it's me, Ari. Oh, hello, Ari. I knew Ari was supposed to be my closest friend, so I tried to sound friend-like. How are you? How's your marriage? Isabel looked at me with an emphatic frown, but I don't think he'd heard properly. Well, just got back from that thing in Edinburgh. Oh, I said, trying to pretend I knew what that thing in Edinburgh was. Right, yes, that thing in Edinburgh, of course. How was that? It was good, yeah, it was good. Caught up with St. Andrew's lot. Listen, mate, I hear it's been a bit of a week for you. Yes, it has. It has been a lot of a week for me. So I wasn't sure if you'd still be up for the football. The football, Cambridge Kettering. We could have a pint of mild and a bit of a chat about that top secret thing you told me the last time we spoke. Secret. Every molecule of me was now alert. What secret? Don't think I should broadcast it. No, no, you're right. Don't say it out loud. In fact, don't tell anyone. Isabel was now in the hallway looking at me with suspicion. But to answer you, yes, I will go to the football. And I pressed the red button on the phone to weary at the probability that I would have to switch another human life into non-existence. A few seconds of silence over breakfast, you become something else, a different species. That is the easy bit. That is simple molecular rearrangement. Our inner technology can do that without a problem with the correct commands and model to work from. There are no new ingredients in the universe. And humans, however they may look, are made of roughly the same things we are. The difficulty, though, is the other stuff, the stuff that happens when you look in the bathroom mirror and see this new you and don't want to throw up into the sink at the sight of yourself like you wanted to every other morning, and when you wear clothes and you realize it is starting to feel like quite a normal thing to do, and when you walk downstairs and see the life form that is meant to be your son eating toast, listening to music only he can hear, it takes you a second, or 2, 3, 4 seconds, to realize that actually this is not your son. He means nothing to you. Not only that, he has to mean nothing to you. Also, your wife. Your wife is not your wife. Your wife who loves you but doesn't really like you because of something you never did, but which couldn't be any worse from her perspective than the something you're going to do. She is an alien. She is as alien as they come, a primate whose nearest evolutionary cousins are hairy, tree-dwelling knuckle-draggers known as chimpanzees. And yet, when everything is alien, the alien becomes familiar, and you can judge her as humans judge her. You can watch her when she drinks her pink grapefruit juice and stares at her son with worried, helpless eyes. You can see that for her being a parent is standing on a shore and watching her child, in a vulnerable craft heading out over deeper and deeper water, hoping but not knowing they will be land somewhere ahead, and you can see her beauty. Beauty on Earth is the same as elsewhere, ideal in that it is tantalizing and unsolvable, creating a delicious kind of confusion. I was confused, I was lost. I wished I had a new wound just so she could attend to me. What are you looking at? She asked me. You, I said. She looked at Gulliver. He couldn't hear us. Then she looked back at me as confused as myself. We are worried. What are you doing? I told you. Well, I am accumulating information. You are wasting time. I'm not. I know what I'm doing. It was never meant to take this long. I know. But I'm learning more about the humans. They are more complicated than we first thought. They are sometimes violent, but more often care about each other. There is more goodness in them than anything else. I am convinced of it. What are you saying? I don't know what I'm saying. I am confused. Some things have stopped making sense. This happens occasionally on a new planet. The perspective changes to that of its inhabitants, but our perspective has not changed. Do you understand that? Yes, I do understand. Stay pure. I will. Life, death, football. Humans are one of the few intelligent beings in the galaxy who haven't quite solved the problem of death, yet they don't spend their whole life screeching and howling in terror, clawing at their own bodies or rolling around on the floor. Some humans do that, I saw them in the hospital. But those humans are considered the mad ones. Now consider this, a human life is on average 80 Earth years, or around 30,000 Earth days, which means they are born. They make some friends, eat a few meals, they get married or they don't get married, have a child or two or not, drink a few thousand glasses of wine, have sexual intercourse a few times, discover a lump somewhere, feel a bit of regret, wonder where all the time went, know they should have done it differently, realize they would have done it the same, and then they die, into the great black nothing, out of space, out of time. The most trivial of trivial zeroed, and that's it. Full caboodle, all confined to the same mediocre planet, but at ground level the humans don't appear to spend their entire lives in a catatonic state. No, they do other things, things like washing, listening, gardening, eating, driving, working, yearning, earning, staring, drinking, sighing, reading, gaming, sunbathing, complaining, jogging, quibbling, caring, mingling, fantasizing, googling, parenting, renovating, loving, dancing, fucking, regretting, failing, striving, hoping, sleeping, and sport. Apparently I, or rather Andrew, liked sport, and the sport he liked was football. Luckily for Professor Andrew Martin, the football team he supported was Cambridge United, one of those which successfully avoided the perils and existential trauma of victory. To support Cambridge United, I discovered, was to support the idea of failure. To watch a team's feet consistently avoid the spherical Earth symbol seemed to frustrate their supporters greatly, but they obviously wouldn't have had it any other way. The truth is, you see, however much they would beg to disagree, humans don't actually like to win, or rather they like winning for 10 seconds, but if they keep on winning they end up actually having to think about other things like life and death. The only thing humans like less than winning is losing, but at least something can be done about that. With absolute winning there is nothing to be done, they just have to deal with it. Now I was there at the game to see Cambridge United play against a team called Kettering. I'd asked Gulliver if he wanted to come with me so I could keep an eye on him, and he had said with sarcasm, "Yeah, Dad, you know me so well." So it was just me and Ari. Or to give him his full title, Professor Ari Ramadi Arasala Tam, as I've said, this was Andrew's closest friend. Although I've learned from Isabel that I didn't really have friends as such, more acquaintances. Anyway, Ari was an expert. Human definition on theoretical physics. He was also quite rotund, as if he didn't just want to watch football but become one. So he said during a period when Cambridge United didn't have the ball, that is to say, any time during the match, "How are things, things?" He stuffed some crisps into his mouth and made no attempt to conceal their fate. "You know, I was a bit worried about you." He laughed. It was the laugh human males do to hide emotion. "Well, I say why are you?" was more mild concern. "I say mild concern, but it was more wonder if he's done a Nash." "What do you mean?" He told me what he meant. Apparently human mathematicians have a habit of going mad. He gave me a list of names: Nash, Cantor, Gödel, Turing, and I nodded along as if they meant something. And then he said, Riemann, I heard you weren't eating much." "I was thinking more Gödel than Riemann actually," he said. By Gödel I later learned he meant Kurt Gödel, another German mathematician. However, this one's particular psychological quirk was that he had believed everyone was trying to poison his food, so he had stopped eating altogether. By that definition of madness, Ari appeared very sane indeed. "No, I haven't done one of those. I'm eating now. Peanut butter sandwiches mainly." "Sounds like more of a Presley," he said, laughing. And then he gave me a serious look. I could tell it was serious because he had swallowed and wasn't putting any more food in his mouth. Because you know, prime numbers are fucking serious, man. Some serious shit. They can make you lose it. They're like sirens. They call you in with their isolated beauty, and before you know it, you're in some major mind shit. When I heard about your naked corpus at Corpus, I thought you would crack it up a bit. No, I am on the rails, I said, like a train or a close hanger. And Isabel, everything fine with you and Isabel? Yes, I said, she is my wife, and I love her. Everything is fine, fine. He frowned at me, and he took a moment's glance to see if Cambridge United were anywhere near the ball. He seemed relieved to see they weren't. Really, everything's fine. I could see he needed more confirmation. Till I loved, I never lived. He shook his head and gave a facial expression I can now safely classify as bewilderment. What's that? Shakespeare, Tennyson, Marvel? I shook my head. No. Emily Dickinson. I've been reading a lot of her poetry and also Anne Sexton's, and Walt Whitman too. Poetry seems to say a lot about us, you know, us humans. Emily Dickinson. You're quoting Emily Dickinson as a match. Yes, I sensed again I was getting the context wrong. Everything here was about context. There was nothing that was right for every occasion. I didn't get it. The air always had hydrogen in it wherever you were, but that was pretty much the only consistent thing. What was the big difference that made quoting love poetry inappropriate in this context? I had no idea. Right, he said, and paused for the large communal groan as Kettering scored a goal. I groaned too. Everything was actually quite diverting, and certainly the most enjoyable aspect of sports, spectating. I might have overdone it a little bit, though, judging from the looks I was getting. Or maybe they'd seen me on the internet. Okay, he said. And what does Isabel feel about everything, everything? You, Andrew, what does she think? Does she know about, you know? Is that what triggered it? This was my moment. I inhaled. The secret, I told you, yeah, about the Riemann hypothesis. He scrunched his face in confusion. What? Oh, man, unless you've been sleeping with a hypothesis on the side. So what was the secret? That you're having it away with a student? Oh, I said, feeling relief. So I definitely didn't say anything about work the last time I saw you. No, for once, you didn't. He turned back to the football. So are you going to spill the beans about this student? My memory is a bit hazy, to be honest with you. That's convenient, perfect alibi, if Isabel finds out. Not that you're exactly man of the match in her eyes. What do you mean? No offense, mate, but you've told me what her opinion is. What is her opinion of? I hesitated. Of me. He pressed one final handful of crisps in his mouth and washed it down with that disgusting, phosphoric acid-flavored drink called Coca-Cola. Her opinion is that you are a selfish bastard. Why does she think that? Maybe because you are a selfish bastard. But then we're all selfish bastards, are we? Oh yeah. It's our DNA. Dawkins pointed that out to us way back. But you, man, your selfish gene is on a different level. With you, I should imagine, your selfish gene is similar to the one that smashed a rock over the head of that penultimate Neanderthal before turning round and screwing his wife. He smiled and carried on watching the match. It was a long match. Elsewhere in the universe stars formed and others ceased to be. Was this the purpose of human existence? Was the purpose somewhere inside the pleasure, or at least the casual simplicity, of a football match? Eventually, the game ended. That was great, Allied, as we walked out of the ground. Was it? We lost 4-0, yes, but while I watched it, I didn't think once about my mortality, or the various other difficulties our mortal form will bring in later life. He looked bewildered again. He was going to say something, but he was beaten to it by someone throwing an empty can at my head. Even though it was thrown from behind, I had sensed it coming and ducked quickly out of the way. Ari was stunned by my reflexes, as I think was the can thrower. Oi, wanker, the can thrower said. You're that freak on the web, the naked one, bit warm in you, with all those clothes on. Peace off, mate, Ari said nervously. The man did the opposite. The can thrower was walking over. He had red cheeks and very small eyes and greasy black hair. He was flanked by two friends. All three of them had faces ready for violence. Red Cheeks leaned in close to Ari. Did you say big man? There might have been a piece in there, said Ari. And there was definitely an off. The man grabbed Ari's coat. Think you're smart? Moderately. I held the man's arm. Get off me, you fucking perv, he responded. I was speaking of fat bastard. I wanted to hurt him, I'd never wanted to hurt anyone. Only needed to, and there was a difference. With this person there was a definite desire to hurt him. I heard the rasp of his breath and tightened his lungs. Within seconds he was reaching for his inhaler. We'll be on our way, I said, releasing the pressure in his chest. And you three won't bother us again. Ari and I walked home unfollowed. Bloody hell, said Ari. What was that? I didn't answer. How could I? What that had been was something Ari could never understand. Clouds gathered together quickly, the sky darkened, it looked like rain. I hated rain, as I've told you. I knew earth rain wasn't sulfuric acid, but rain, all rain, was something I could not abide. I panicked. I started running. Wait, said Ari, who's running behind me. What are you doing, Rain? I said, pushing for a dome around the whole of Cambridge. I can't stand rain. Light bulb. Have a nice time, Isabel asked on my return. She was standing on top of one form of primitive technology, stepladder, changing another one. An incandescent light bulb. Yes, I said. I did some good groaning. But to be honest with you, I don't think I'll go again. She dropped the new bulb. It smashed. Damn, we don't have another one. She looked almost like she might cry about this fact. She stepped down from the ladder. And I stared up at the dead light bulb still hanging there. I concentrated hard. A moment later it was working again. That was lucky. It didn't need changing after all. Isabel stared at the light. The golden illumination on her skin was quite mesmerizing for some reason. The way it shifted shadow made her more distinctly herself. How weird, she said. Then she looked down at the broken glass. I'll see to that, I said. And she smiled at me, and her hand touched mine and gave it a quick pulse of gratitude. And then she did something I wasn't expecting at all. She embraced me gently, with broken glass still at our feet. I breathed her in. I liked the warmth of her body against mine. And realized the pathos of being a human, of being a mortal creature who was essentially alone, but needed the myth of togetherness, with others, friends, children, lovers. It was an attractive myth. It was a myth you could easily inhabit. Oh, Andrew, she said. I didn't know what she meant by this simple declaration of my name, but when she stroked my back, I found myself stroking hers and saying the words that seemed somehow the most appropriate. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Shopping. I went to the funeral of Daniel Russell. I watched the coffin being lowered into the ground and earth being sprinkled over the top of the wood casket. There were lots of people there, most of them wearing black. A few were crying. Afterwards, Isabel wanted to go over and talk to Tabitha. Tabitha looked different to when I had last seen her. She looked older, even though it had only been a week. She wasn't crying, but it seemed like an effort not to. Isabel stroked her arm. Listen, Tabitha, I just want you to know we're here. Whatever you need, we're here. Thank you, Isabel. That really does mean a lot. It really does. Just basic stuff. If you don't feel up to the supermarket, supermarkets are not the most sympathetic of places. That's very kind. I know you can do it online, but I've never got the hang of it. Well, don't worry, we'll sort it out. And this actually happened. Isabel went to get another human shopping and paid for it and came home and told me I was looking better. Am I? Yes, you're looking yourself again. The zeta function. Are you sure you're ready? Isabel asked me the next Monday morning as I ate my first peanut butter sandwich of the day. Newton was asking it too, either that or he was asking about the sandwich. I tore him off a piece. Yes, it will be fine. What could go wrong? This was when Gulliver let out a mocking groan sound, the only sound he'd made all morning. That's up, Gulliver? I asked. Everything, he said. He didn't expand. Instead, he left his uneaten cereal and stormed upstairs. Should I follow him? No, Isabel said. Give him time. I nodded. I trusted her. Time was her subject. After all, an hour later I was in Andrew's office. It was the first time I had been there since I deleted the email to Daniel Russell. This time I wasn't in a rush and could absorb a few more details. As he was a professor, there were books lining every wall, designed so that from whichever Angle you looked at him you would see a book. I looked at some of the titles, very primitive looking in the main, a history of binary and other non-decimal numeration, hyperbolic geometry, the book of hexagonal tessellation, logarithmic spirals and the golden mean. There was a book written by Andrew himself, one I hadn't noticed. The last time I had been here, it was a thin book called The Zeta Function. It had the words uncorrected proof copy on the cover. I made sure the door was locked and then sat down in his chair and read every word. And what a depressing read it was, I have to say. It was about the Riemann hypothesis and what seemed like his futile quest to prove it and explain why the spaces between prime numbers increased the way they did. The tragedy was in realizing how desperately he had wanted to solve it, and of course after he had written the book he had solved it, though the benefits he'd imagined would never happen, because I had destroyed the proof. And I began to think of how fundamentally our equivalent mathematical breakthrough, the one which we came to know as the second basic theory of prime numbers, had on us, how it enabled us to do all that we can do, travel the universe, inhabit other worlds, transform into other bodies, live as long as we want to live, search each other's minds, each other's dreams, all that. The Zeta Function did however list all the things humans had achieved, the main steps on the road, the developments that had advanced them towards civilization. Fire, that was a biggie, the plow, the printing press, the steam engine, the microchip, the discovery of DNA, and humans would be the first to congratulate themselves on all this.